everyone, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Wida Ristianti. I am from English literature. Here I would like to present about the historical background of psycholinguistics. The first is I will tell you about the definition of psycholinguistics. The psycholinguistic is combining of two words. The first is psychology and the last is linguistics. Psychology is the scientific study of human behavior and cognition, while the linguistics is the scientific study of the language. Then, psycholinguistics is together from a new modern scientific discipline, then called as psycholinguistics. According to Alan Garnham in his book, psycholinguistics is the study of the mental mechanism that make it possible for people to use language. It is scientific discipline whose goal is a coherent theory of the way in which language is produced and understood. While according to David Carroll in Psychology of Language, at its heart, psycholinguistic work consists of two questions. One is what knowledge of language is needed for us to use language. In a sense, we must know a language to use it, but we are not always fully aware of its knowledge. The other primary psycholinguistic question is what cognitive processes are involved in the ordinary use of language. By ordinary use of language, I mean such things as understanding a lecture, reading a book, writing a letter, and holding a conversation. The next is antecedents of modern psychology. Wilhelm Wundt in 1832 until 1820 was a psychologist, doctor, and professor, now widely respected as the father of experimental psychology. Wundt believed that language reflects mental representation and argued that internal mental states were so important that he was very influential in the emergence of behaviorism. Wilhelm is the author of a history of psycholinguistics, the pre-Chomskyan era. He is director emeritus of the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics in Nizhny, the Netherlands, which he founded in 1980. He is also emeritus honorary professor of psycholinguistics at Nizhny University. He has a PhD in psychology from Leiden University in 1965. Was a postdoctoral research fellow at Harvard University, a visiting professor at the University of Illinois, full professor of psychology at Groningen University, member at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton in 1971 until 1972. Professor Experimental Psychology at Nizhny University, and since 1980, scientific member of the Max Planck Society. He has published widely in psychology, mathematical psychology, and psycholinguistics. His books include Unbinocular Reality in 1965, Formal Grammars in Linguistics and Psycholinguistics, Trifles in 1975, published in 2008, and Speaking from Intention to Articulation in 1989. The beginning of the modern era in psycholinguistics, there were the critical moments in history of language acquisition research making foundation for the modern era. Two seminars sponsored by the Social Science Research Council in US and the subsequent publication of the original version of Osgood and C books in 1965. Psycholinguistics is a survey of theory and research problems. Then there is three approaches to language behavior were identified. The first is linguistic approach. The second is learning theory approach based on behaviorism, and the last is information theory approach. The psycholinguistics has four historical roots, which by the end of the 19th century has merged. By then, this discipline, usually called the psychology of language, was established. The first root was comparative linguistics, which raised the issue of the psychological origin of language. The second root was the study of language in the brain, with brain scales as the pioneers and the Broca and Wernicke discoveries as major landmarks. The third root was the diary approach to child development, which emerged from Lissau-Emil. The fourth was the experimental laboratory approach to speech and language processing, which originated from Darn's mental chronometry. Wilmot unified these four approaches in his monumental Die Sprache of 1900. These four perspectives of psycholinguistics continue into the 20th century, but in quite different frameworks. There was German consciousness and Turk psychology, Swiss or French, and almost aggressive holism in approachology, as well as reviewing all these perspectives. The book looks at the deep depression of the fight during the Third Reich and its optimistics. Multidisciplinary reimaginary during the 1950, with the mathematical theory of the communication as a major impetus. Okay, maybe enough here my presentation. Thank you for watching. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.